In this May Day, which is a very important day of workers globally, we do want to salute our membership of the SRWP, the membership of NUMSA, and all other formations of the working class all over the world. Of course, May Day has remained the very important day in the history of struggles that the workers have waged all over the world since Haymarket Square massacre and the killing of the working class for their genuine stance demanding an 8-hour week, demanding 8 hours in a day and a 40-hour week. The workers of the world, including in our country, use May Day to be a rallying point. It's a pity and sad that we will be celebrating May Day today under complete different condition, where basically we are faced with a serious pandemic which has basically pulled the plug to the entire capitalist economy. And I think what COVID-19 exposes is what we have maintained over many, many decades, that capitalism as a system, which is a system of greed, does not have solutions for problems that confront humanity. It is a fact that the vulnerable, which is the majority, which is the working class that does not own means of production, which is economically marginalized, oppressed, dispossessed, landless, are the worst victims of this particular pandemic all over the world. I think, if anything to go by, that in the United States, we're learning that the most people who died out of this pandemic are those who are ravaged by inequalities. And obviously in our country, it means that we are facing a ticking bomb, that if this pandemic happened to spread, it will basically be suicidal to the majority of the working class in our country, who don't have a plate of food, who are victims of all social ills of capitalism, such as poverty, unemployment, and inequalities. And of course, I think the bosses have demonstrated the fact that they advance absolutely no humanity. When government decided to lock down the economy to curb the spread of the virus, it became very clear that for the bosses, this was an opportunity to basically further demonstrate their true colors, where instead of going and tap on their reserves, on the billions and profits that have been produced by the producers of wealth, the workers, they decided to go for the lives of workers. They decided not to pay workers full pay. And this is despite the fact that government would have said, look, you must apply to UIF. The simple thing that you would have expected is that they would have gone for a top-up and make sure that for a mere 28 days that they will be able to make sure that workers who are not only feeding their immediate families, they take care of the bulk majority in this country who do not have a plate of food in terms of extended families. But also, I think we should be very critical of government in as much as we appreciate the lockdown, but there were no decisive measures. I mean, we need in this country a national income grant that must take care of the bulk majority, and not just a 300 rand. Who can live on 300 rand? A decisive, and in our view, is that government need to consult working class formations, debate what is a fair national income grant that can ensure that a family can be able to eat and have a plate of food. And I think what we have experienced is the fact that government, despite the fact that for years we have demanded that they must act decisively, they must intervene in the economy, in dealing with this crisis, they have demonstrated that they have capacity to take measures. In our view, we think that this should not have been spontaneous. Government should have actually taken measures, and of course those measures, in our view, a couple of things in the situation we're in during this, as we are celebrating May Day, that we must be able to advocate for. One, we think that it is crucial for government not to leave the lives of workers to greedy employers, some who are very unscrupulous, that it is important that government must take measures. And as a union, we have advanced, for instance, as NUMSA demands, we think that government must turn those demands into law so that it becomes compulsory for the bosses to adhere to them, so that when workers do go back to work, they are basically safe. Because if workers are not safe and they get infected by this pandemic, it means they will take this virus back home and the victims will be our own communities. So we can't gamble about the lives of workers, and we think that government must be very strict in making sure that employers indeed, and as NUMSA, we have forwarding those demands now across all sectors of the economy. But above all, we think that great problems must deliver great solution. At the back of this pandemic must actually be presenting an opportunity rather than to overwhelm us. We think that the government must move decisively and go for an expansionary budget instead of allowing dumping of production from other countries. It is time that we actually, if we are to ensure that our people's lives improve, we need a government that is going to intervene in the economy, take into the public hands critical key sectors such as steel industry, such as petrochemicals, such as stopping the move which was beginning to crystallize, where basically there's an agenda to privatize provision of energy. In our view, ESCOM must continue to be in the hands of the state. Healthcare system, we need a national healthcare system where basically if we are to win this war against this virus, it can be that access to healthcare is dependent on the basis of who's got access to the economy. We need to nationalize healthcare as a country and make sure that we get out of a crisis where our public hospitals infrastructure was collapsing. We need to rebuild that infrastructure. We need to make sure that healthcare is accessible. And the only way of going about is to make sure that public workers who work in hospitals, who service the public, are paid a decent living wage that ensures that they are motivated to continue to soldier on behalf of the country. And of course, I think moving forward, when others think that this moment presents a crisis, we think that we should be using this crisis and make sure that we take a different path from the capitalist system, which is riddled with all social ills. And we can see it took a couple of days and weeks for it to collapse. And countries that are doing well are those countries where the state intervene and make sure that its people are part of owning their particular economy.